G'day Guardians, Rogi here, welcoming you to week 2 of Grandmasters in Season of the Lost. After last week's slugfest that was Hollowed Lair, we've been gifted a brief moment of respite in the form of Lake of Shadows. Now, Lake of Shadows is most well known as the shortest strike in Destiny 2, with a normal completion taking anywhere between 3 to 5 minutes. So how does it fare up once the Grandmaster modifiers have been applied? Well, pretty much the same. I wouldn't say it's an easy Grandmaster by any stretch, as it has its fair share of tough to traverse areas, but with a strong fire team, you'll clear out this Grandmaster in about 20 minutes. Another plus to it being a shorter strike is if you do end up biting the dust and returning to orbit, the time commitment isn't nearly as punishing as the 30-minute trudge to face off against the Fnatic in last week's Hollowed Lair. So let's take a quick look at my fire team's loadout for Lake of Shadows. I'm using a near identical build to last week's Grandmaster, Blinding Ignition Code, Overload Arcbow, and 1000 Voices. Matt was running Thunder Crash Titan with Blinding Ignition Code, Tiku's Divination, and Falling Guillotine. And finally Cryptic had a Void Warlock with Accrued Redemption, Jotun, and Falling Guillotine. These loadouts had one thing in mind: make it to the boss and burn him down as quick as possible. This is where the double Falling Guillotines and 1k comes in, using the ignition codes for ad control, the bows for overload, and of course Cryptic with his trusty Jotun for any unstoppables that got in our way. Alongside the usual Grandmaster modifiers, there are two that really caught my eye and that you'll want to keep an eye on. Epitaph, making Taken combatants spawn a Blight Geyser, which I don't think was working, or at least I didn't notice it. Maybe I'm still scarred from last week's mini-screebs. The other is Graxus Bile, causing environmental effects to throw you further and deal more damage. This one is a pain, and you'll see why. Similar to last week's Grandmaster Guide, we'll be looking at each encounter and how best to tackle those tough Taken. The first encounter is a series of 3 blights that all must be destroyed before you can move on. There is a trick here though. Ignore the first blight, head over to the third, clearing out any enemy along the way. Now, as soon as you start this encounter, you'll see 1 unstoppable Phalanx, 2 arc-shielded Centurions, and a handful of Scions. Make sure to focus down the Centurions first, as their Axion darts can cause a lot of trouble if left unattended. The Unstoppable is a bit of a coward, opting to stay within the safety of his Blight Shield, only being coerced out once his allies have been slain. We tried a few different methods of unstoppable stunning, starting off with a Vex Mythoclast, but ultimately we landed on Jotun due to the abundance of Solar Shields, a total of 12 in this strike. Stun, kill, run to the next Blight. You'll meet a trio of Cabal at Blight number 2, 2 unstoppable and 1 very stoppable. Try and get the 2 champions to group up for a double stun and let loose the burst. We were running 2 Falling Guillotines in preparation for the boss room, so it meant we had to get up close and personal for each champion takedown. Onwards to the Blight number 3, where Bungie has something special waiting for us. Just kidding, it's 2 more unstoppable champions. Sparrow to the far side of this Blight, as this forces the 2 unstoppable champions to walk out of its safety, making for easy pickings. Now that we've cleared out all of the enemies, it's just the 3 remaining Blights. First up, we want to take out Blight number 3, then make your way back to this position where 2 Guardians will wait while the 3rd clears Blight number 1. Once Blight number 1 is clear, a wave of enemies will spawn in. You should be positioned to easily take out the Overload Hobgoblin before it can get a single shot off, then proceed to clean up the gaggle of Taken Scions. Now, before we destroy Blight number 2, there's one more Overload to deal with. As Blight number 2 evaporates into nothingness, a switch flicks in the tiny brains of the Taken forces, and they all flock towards the dam's entrance. This is where Jotun was a massive time saver for us, making short work of the 2 solar shielded mages, taking out any miners with the explosions created. Now, there are 2 overloads hanging at the back line, not really doing much, unless of course you're standing out in the open, so save them for last. The 1 arc shielded Centurion who, like his mates at the start, can be a real pain in the sparrow once his Axion darts start chasing you down. This next room is a great place to catch your breath. A small sampling of Taken and 2 solar shielded mages blocking your advancement. The real enemies in this room is the room itself. With the increased damage and knockback from environmental effect, the Taken walls are really deadly. Slowly but surely scale your way down the inside of the dam, making use of those blinding grenades whenever you see a group of taken enemies. The blinding grenades are such a crutch to lean on in this strike. In pretty much any Grandmaster room, shoot out a blinding grenade and all enemies just, they're blinded. They can't shoot back. It'll allow you to easily reposition and find your footing. Once those two mages have been dealt with, a quick walk down the corridor is where we come face to face with two unstoppable Phalanx, perfectly positioned to ruin your run with a well-placed shock blast. We had a great deal of success stealthing within range for a double stun, then having our Titan fueled up on crayons, Thunder Crash for a near instant kill, allowing for a quick finisher. As we begin to scale the side of the dam, you'll encounter an additional 3 Overload champions who, thankfully, can be dealt with one at a time. The first champion has positioned themselves in an easy to access walkway with a clear line of sight, allowing for you to perma-stun with the Overload bow. You want to make sure to get that stun out nice and early, because if left unattended, that Overload champion can wreak havoc. Once dealt with, continue moving forward. The next Overload is on the broken walkway towards the end. Again, very easy to kill from range, assuming you can find a position where you won't be booped to your death. Of course, along the way, there are going to be taken forces dotted within the dam's wall, so make sure to take them out as you're advancing. The third Overload can be found swapping stories with an unstoppable champion. Maybe they're talking about how cool the new Hunter set looks. Hunter fans or not, they must be destroyed. My recommendation is to finish off the named enemy at the back, take his position, as you'll get a straight shot at their little gossip cave. Once again, we found ourselves inside the dam itself, where we'll encounter our final unstoppable champion of the strike. He'll have a couple of taken goblins there using their immune ability, so make sure to clear them out first. A well-placed blinding nade should do the trick. Even if it doesn't kill them, it will blind them, forcing them to stop their ability. Now, this champion will charge at you, so you need to make sure your stuns are on point, or he'll quickly wipe out your fire team. If you get the stun, he'll go down without any real issue. The next group can give you some trouble though, so don't get too confident and play this one with caution in mind. My fire team got cleaned up by that Solar Shielded Knight's fire attack a few times. Now, this group do have a tendency to group up, so make sure you use your AoE abilities. The final noteworthy enemy in the room is a Solar Shielded Knight. Toast that fool with Destiny's favourite toaster, Jotun. In this next kind of transition-y room, you'll encounter the Taken Asphyxiator, wielder of the slowest moving attack in Destiny 2. I mean, this guy's attack, it's like that steamroller scene from Austin Powers. It's laughable, really. He does have a void shield though, which I guess is worth a mention, but this guy doesn't pose any threat. Take out the Taken Goblins on the left, make sure you've got someone on with a void weapon who can just deal with the Taken Asphyxiator, it's no issue. With the Taken Asphyxiator out of the way, just 3 more champions, 3 more Overload champions stand in the way of you and glory. As you enter the next room, you'll see a very well lit room just right in front of you. Now, there is an Overload hiding in there, snickering to himself at how sneaky his little hiding spot is. Ruin his day with a quick Overload shot and a couple of sword swings. Continue moving forward into the group of taken enemies, stunning that first Overload at the back there, but pay attention to your ammo situation, as there are only 5 more enemies before the boss, and without ample heavy ammo, this fight can go south real quick. Last Overload of the strike, it just kind of sits there with not too much room to maneuver. Getting off that quick stun will be his death sentence. As we enter the boss room, we are welcomed by a friendly little blight sitting in the middle of this circular arena, which when killed off will spawn Grask the Consumed, who might be the only remaining boss in the game that is not damage gated. So take advantage of that fact and melt the boss. Our burst rotation was Nova Bomb, Thunder Crash, and Shadow Shot for supers, and of course that double falling guillotine and 1k for the weapons. If done correctly, you'll have just finished off Grask before any enemies spawn. You'll want to do this because if you don't and the enemies spawn, this fight is difficult. I mean, we messed up our rotations, didn't have enough heavy ammo, whatever the case, a few times, and the fight just kind of ends. So it's really a kill or be killed kind of moment. So there we have it, Guardians. Lake of Shadows done. Cross off the list. Now, this is one of the easier, if not easiest, Grandmaster in our rotation of GMs this season, so make sure to abuse that fact. It took us about 17 to 19 minutes on average to clean out this strike, and obviously it's not double rewards like it was last week with Hollowed Lair, but Hollowed Lair was quite a tough one, around 30 minutes average completion time. So put together your fire team, equip those Jotuns, and get some nice, easy clears of Lake of Shadow while it's available.
Without Oryx, I didn't think they could still, well,